Hey everyone. Hello and welcome to our group presentation. Today, myself and my group members are going to present our replication project on increasing physical activity through self monitoring. My name is Breon, and my group members' names are Earl, Marcus, and Swati. The order of the presentation will go as follows. We're going to start off with background information for literature review. We're going to review the methodology, the procedures, the social validity, results, and discussion. So at this time, I'm going to give you guys a little bit more information about the literature behind our project. So, a little bit behind our project. We as humans have the ability to influence our own levels of self control. So, basically, that just means that we motivate ourselves and we have some kind of motivation or reason behind why we do things. A defining feature of behavioral treatment is setting measurable behavior goals for weight loss and self monitoring of dietary intake and physical activity, which is often accompanied by interventionist feedback to participants and essential for facilitating goal achievement. So basically, in order for us to facilitate our own achievements, self monitoring is just a good way to show ourselves support. Self monitoring helps us pretty much be our own counselors or our own coach, and it helps us to facilitate a bigger outcome on what we would like to improve. So, our project dealt with weight loss, and pretty much in order to achieve some type of weight loss, and to decrease risk for chronic diseases, we all need some kind of motivation. And motivation is just one of those big things that is pretty much a predictor of weight loss and weight maintenance. Um, in the project, we did a lot of self monitoring and self progress where we were able to check in with our coach, which was Marcus. And basically, he provided us with program recommendations that would help us to improve our treatment, which is what self monitoring seeks to do pretty much every day when we use it. It seeks to help us improve treatment outcomes. It gives us a chance to grow and develop by using our own motivation as treatment and also our coach's motivation for treatment. Usually, when we have support and feedback, I mean, this is anybody outside of ourselves, like it gives us really, really good reinforcement. And reinforcement really like promotes success. When we get reinforced, we feel like, hey, we can really do this. This is awesome. This is great. So a lot of the background from our project showed that when reinforcement is provided and feedback, you're more likely to pretty much do something again. You're more likely for it to happen again. Within the last decade, pedometers have pretty much been an effective tool to monitor weight loss. And so within our project, pedometers was one of the materials used to measure steps. And of course, now that we are in a day and age where technology is really advanced, we actually were able to use our phones as our pedometers to track and measure our steps. And that's how we showed the self monitoring and the motivation that we had to either walk more or not walk more, but it definitely helped to motivate us. Richardson summarized findings from 9 randomized and controlled pedometer-based programs and found that participants increased their activity by at least 2,000 to 3,000 steps. So basically, research has found that when pedometers have been used, findings have shown that most participants, with the help of a pedometer and just being able to look at a pedometer, has helped them to increase their weight loss. So overall, pretty much the research states and suggests that motivation and the use of feedback show us a correlation between weight loss and steps. And technology has really given us a chance to definitely expand on that subject and be able to easily communicate, definitely with looking at the technology. The purpose of our project was to pretty much study the effectiveness of self-monitoring with pedometers and social positive reinforcement provided to us from Marcus, and in this case, with the project that we were replicating from the adult in the study to increase our physical activity. So Earl is going to give us a little bit more information about the methodology of our project. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Brian. Our study consisted of 4 participants, 2 females and 2 males. Each participant was in pretty decent health and maintained a steady, active daily regimen. Although it was reported that each participant is active throughout the day, the general consensus amongst all participants was that each person felt that there was room for improvement. Everyone agreed that it would be beneficial to increase their daily steps in order to maintain or to improve their current health status. All of the participants in this study are in the Applied Behavior Analysis Master's Program at Ball State University. The ages of the participants range from 26 to 32 years of age. Before we begin collecting data, every participant was in agreement that we would use the same mode of technology to record our steps. Since each member had an Apple iPhone, we decided to use the health application on the iPhone to ensure that our data collection methods were identical. We also collectively agreed that we would make sure that all of our phones were updated to the iOS 10 version. The health application on the iPhone was an ideal choice because of its technological capabilities. The health application has an activity icon which records our daily steps and will also break down the steps we took weekly and monthly. Since the basis of this study consisted of recording our daily steps to increase our physical activity, we operationally defined physical activity as the number of steps taken within a 24-hour session. The experimenter, Marcus, performed reliability checks for each participant on a weekly basis by checking the weekly steps from each participant and comparing it to the previous week's results. The inter-observer agreement was calculated by dividing the experimenter agreement by the participants' agreements, then multiplying by 100 to obtain a percentage. It was determined that the intervention integrity was 100% for each participant in the study. Finally, it should be noted that we used an ABAB reversal design. The initial phase of the study was a baseline, which was followed by the intervention phase, then returning to a baseline phase, and finally concluding with the treatment phase. Now, Swati will do the procedures.
Thank you all. So I'm going to talk about the procedure that we followed. Each of us had to carry our iPhones on us during the day with the health app running in the background, recording the number of steps taken by us. We clocked in our weights thrice in the whole procedure, once before we began, once at the end of the intervention, and once at the conclusion of the experiment. During baseline, we recorded our steps taken at the end of the phase along with our weight. During intervention, we recorded our steps every day and shared them with the experimenter. And during the reversal phase, the steps were recorded at the end of the phase along with the participants' weights. Although during the second phase of intervention, our steps were clocked and shared every day. We used a group message platform to remind ourselves to send in our daily stats to the experimenter, which was Marcus in our case, and to ensure smooth functioning of the experiment. At the end of the initial baseline, Marcus met us over video conferencing to discuss our progress. And in addition to replying to our emails with feedback, motivating us to aim for a higher number of steps per day, we generated our progress graphs individually and shared the same with Marcus. Now over to Brian.
Now we're going to take a look at our graphs and show you guys pretty much the impact that the intervention had on each of our behaviors. So as you can see from my graph, my results indicated that there was an increase of steps between the initial baseline, which will be that first baseline before the phase line, and the final intervention. So in intervention 1, which is that second column, my step count was at 25,730 steps total. Those were the total steps for intervention 1. And upon completion, that very last intervention, my steps were at a total count of 30,394. So you can definitely see that it was an increase between both interventions. And the average amount of steps that I usually took was between about 5,146 steps in the first intervention and 6,078 steps in the second intervention. So definitely you can see it was an increase between interventions, and I can definitely say that was due to the feedback that I was getting from Marcus and the motivation to know, hey, I'm in intervention, I need to go ahead and try to challenge my steps. Now I'm going to switch to my weight chart and talk a little bit about the weight chart. When I first started, I was at 198 pounds. And at the end of intervention 1, I was at 197 pounds. I really wanted to push myself, and I really wanted to get the proper intervention needed. So at the end of intervention 2, I was at 196 pounds, which was really, really great because that meant that, hey, this really worked. And again, I can definitely say it was because of the feedback from Marcus. Push yourself, take this amount of steps. You're doing a good job, so that I could have some type of difference between my baseline and my interventions. And lastly, what I'm going to discuss is the social validity. Pretty much, validity is concerned, it basically was asking, was it appropriate for me when I took my steps? Did that help me? And it did. Pretty much we had 4 questions to answer, and with those 4 questions, I would definitely say having the pedometer helped me. Having the motivation from Marcus helped me. If I didn't have that motivation, then I probably wouldn't be walking. Definitely, you could tell when I was in baseline and I wasn't speaking with Marcus about my steps, I was a little lax. I believe too, if I'm thinking back correctly, I was a little bit sick during one of my baselines, so I know that my step count was a little lower. But I can definitely see the bigger difference as far as intervention is concerned, which is really good because, again, it really worked. So that is my portion, and I am going to pass it off to Mr. Marcus so that he can share with you a little bit about his results and his survey.
Thanks, Brian. As you will see in the results shown that I'm about to show here, I didn't have the same results that Brian have. Actually, my results indicated that I had a decrease in steps during intervention than I did during baseline. My decrease in steps was a total of 15.1% from the baseline reversal phase compared to intervention phases 1 and 2. But I did record as well, like Brianna, a increase in steps between intervention phase 1 and intervention phase 2. I recorded 62,816 steps total within baseline and reversal phase, and I had 53,322 total steps within intervention phases 1 and 2. I recorded 9,494 more steps during baseline and reversal phase than I did during both intervention phases combined. I averaged 5,567 steps per day, and I had a range of 9,671 total steps per day throughout the 4 phases of the intervention. As pertaining my weight, I did see a little bit more positive results. I started at 228.5 pounds, and I finished my weight at 226.8 pounds. That was a total weight loss of 1.7 pounds, but I cannot say with assurance that the weight loss that I'm reporting was due to the self-monitoring or the positive social praise that I received as well during the intervention. Concerning the social validity survey, I indicated that I had neutral feelings about the use of self-monitoring to help me increase my physical activity. And I also agree that the intervention was beneficial to me. I indicated that I somewhat agree that the intervention helped me with my motivation to participate in physical activity, and that the weekly support during the intervention motivate me to engage in daily physical activities. We'll now go over to Earl, and he'll talk more about his.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. So pretty much the results of my intervention showed that I recorded 43,573 total steps within the baseline and the reversal phase. And I also had a total of 41,654 steps within the intervention phase 1 and 2. I also recorded 1,919 more steps during the during the baseline stage and the reversal phase than during both intervention phases put together. I averaged about 5,570.6 steps per day, and I had a range of 9,041 steps per day throughout the 4 phases of the intervention. Now I'm going to talk about my weight. So ultimately, I'm a big guy. So at the start of the intervention, I weighed in at about 297. After the first intervention phase, I weighed in about 291.1 pounds. And then after intervention phase 2, I weighed in at 289 pounds. So overall, throughout all the phases, I lost a grand total of 8 pounds. I attributed my weight loss to the self-monitoring and the positive social praise that I received from Marcus. The social praise was a motivating factor to keep me going and to help me achieve my ultimate goal. It also gave me more of an incentive to go to the gym. Finally, talking about the social validity survey, my results on the social validity survey showed that I have a strong feeling about the use of self-monitoring and that it played a huge role in helping me increase my physical activity. The self-monitoring forced me to hold myself more accountable to ensure that I stayed active. It also served as a motivating tool because viewing my daily step intake would typically have 2 different effects. If I obtained a lot of steps for that particular day, it would push me to match that same amount or strive to get even more. On the other hand, if my daily step intake was lower than the normal, it would make me feel guilty that I could have done more, while also pushing me to do better the next day. I also agreed that the intervention was beneficial to me because it promoted weight loss, which is evident because I lost 8 pounds. The struggle for most individuals that want to lose weight is the process of getting started and then staying committed to the regimen. Even though my steps decreased from baseline to intervention by 4.4%, participating in the replication of this study itself has kickstarted my personal initiative to lose weight and to get healthier overall. Sorry about that. As for the social motivational element of the study, I agree that it helped me out a lot. It essentially served the same purpose that a trainer does to their client, which is just additive motivation. So overall, I love replicating this study because of the weight loss that I saw as a result. And I've decided to continue collecting data on my daily step intake until I get to my desired weight. Now, Swati will present her results.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about my results in the experiment. The results of the intervention show that I recorded 25,431 steps during baseline and reversal phases, and a total of 22,618 steps in phase 1 and 2 of intervention, with about an average of 2,200 steps a day, which compared to my group mates is not a lot at all. So yeah, when the intervention began, I weighed in about 198 pounds, clocking in at 197 at the end of phase 1 intervention and 196 at the end of phase 2. So all in all, it wasn't a lot. I just lost 2 pounds, and I cannot attribute this with assurance to the self-monitoring and social praise, because I remember during one of the phases I was not well, and I think I clocked in only around 800 steps a day. So, you know, I don't know if the weight loss is because of this or the fact that I was in bed and unwell. But this activity and the consequence of receiving the social praise from Marcus, it definitely motivated me to be on my feet a little bit more and get some exercise. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the social validity. The results of the social validity survey indicated that I have a neutral opinion on whether monitoring the steps really helped me increase my physical activity. But I do agree that the intervention was beneficial to me. I think it brought about some awareness, and yeah, just much like Earl, I've decided to continue to clock in my steps and keep track of my health. So yeah. Now on to Marcus.
Yeah, thanks. I want to discuss more about this discussion and the conclusion of our study. In this study, there were obviously variable results between the 4 participants that the impact of self-monitoring had, as well as social positive praise on our physical activity participation. Even though the group agreed that the intervention increased awareness of our daily health and increased our awareness of how much we exercise. The group completed a social validity survey, as they just previously discussed. And as you can tell, we have variable opinions on the validity that the study had on our physical activity engagement. So another thing that we decided to really weigh in on was the limitations of this study, and I think that there's a few that really stand out. The first limitation that we talked about was probably our biggest, was the kind of a lack of motivation, and that the results of the study were probably impacted because of that lack of motivation. We were saying that we had a lack of motivation, not because we weren't interested in the study, but more because it wasn't an assigned project by a class that we were in, and it wasn't something that we picked up in our everyday lives because, per se, we wanted to. The group did agree, though, that we did have some motivation to get good grades on the project, but that our results may have been more positive during the intervention if we would have had a little bit more intrinsic motivation to lose weight and increase our daily health. We also discussed that some of us typically have escape maintain behaviors, and that some type of contingency plan where the participant could have escaped a difficult or unwanted task may have resulted in better better data. For me, if you could have told me I didn't have to do laundry or dishes for a week, I would have been running miles. We also discussed that some of us typically, or another limitation is that the study was scheduled where the intervention phases went through the weekend, where we saw a dramatic decrease in the amount of steps that we took. Now, as you can probably agree with, our jobs are very physically demanding, and some group members reported that they were pretty worn out by the end of the week. The group agreed that most of us use the weekend to really wind down from that stressful week that we have every day, that we go to every day. Now, a final limitation that we talked about earlier was, I talked a little bit about the weekends and how the weekends being a time for us to relax and to do things we enjoy, which sometimes don't always involve physical engagement. The final limitation in its hilarity would be Earl and Marcus both agreed that they acquired an extremely low amount of steps on Sundays. Now, they both agreed that this was probably due from, some would say, an insane amount of football watching. But we caught ourselves maybe not getting off our couch very much on Sundays, no matter if we had motivation to get good grades or not. So we do believe that if the intervention was scheduled more appropriately and not been during the weekends, during both phases, that our data may have reflected more positive results. But in conclusion, even though some of our results didn't reflect the data that we were hoping for, we all agreed that we were glad that we chose a study that was out of the typical normal research. It was functional to all our lives. I think we all agreed that increasing our physical engagement activity probably was better for all of us. And honestly, it was fun. I've never, myself included, I've never been involved in a project replication like this, and I think this was a good experience to see what social validity really is, and to see if these studies can go on to to other people and have validity. And so, and what's important to remember is that this isn't only for neurotypical people. Some of the group members have had clients that have used the Fitbit, and a certain amount of criteria of steps has gotten those clients their reinforcers. So this can go on to the field of individuals with autism. We thank you for listening into our project. We hope that we taught you some things. We hope that you have some questions for us and that you can kind of push us further into our replication. And I hope that you enjoyed our project. Thanks, guys.